Hi, and welcome to the next episode of Belly to Belly. And we're here talking with great friend Chris Samila from Partnership Leaders. How are you today, Chris?
Doing great. It's great to be here, Bill. Excited for the conversation and I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So, our topic is around partnerships for native AI companies. And obviously, we're looking at a quickly evolving landscape. The companies are scaling quickly, they've got massive funding, but yet the partnership networks are sort of at the very nascent stage with these companies. Can you tell me, why do we need to look at these companies in particular? Why is it different, and why, how is this going to evolve?
Yeah, so this is something we've been doing partnership leaders now for about 8 years, and we have obviously a lot of members around the world. And the thing we started to pick up on, sort of like fall of last year, was the volume of partnership leader members that have gone to native AI companies. It was like all of a sudden the doors opened up. And I think there's a few reasons why this occurred. One is that there's tremendous pressure for these companies to grow very quickly, and you can't do that through hiring a bazillion AEs. And so they know that distribution matters. And distribution matters even more in the world where your competitive mode from a technology perspective is maybe not as deep as it used to be. And so getting to market quickly with service companies that can help you actually deploy your solution and get it embedded in the company became sort of, I think, a common understanding that was going to be required for these companies to be successful. So we saw a lot of hiring, and then a very quick doubling down. And so some of these AI companies, not just, they didn't just hire their first head of partnerships or VP of partnerships. We immediately started to see a lot of, partner managers, partner operations, partner enablement quickly come in behind them at a speed that is just different than what we saw with traditional SaaS. And so again, I think this is that, they have a 2-year-ish time horizon based on funding. If you're not in the top 3 or 4 slots in your category, you're probably dead in the water. And so there's just a lot of hustle from companies to get these partner programs stood up. And I think the other factor at play here is that to get to market, there's the service partners, but then there's also all of the technology integrations into the traditional SaaS solutions. And so we see a lot of activity around, and you see this on LinkedIn every single day, all these announcements around different integrations with other AI companies, but also traditional SaaS companies. And then the last point I'll make on this is that I'll take like the voice AI space as an example. A lot of times to create the end solutions for customers, you have to stack multiple native AI solutions together to make that come to life. And so to get to market, in some cases, you have to have multiple technologies working in unison to make these things happen. And so you're sort of forced into this collaborative motion with other AI companies that maybe wasn't as important in the traditional SaaS world.
That makes sense. And so, a lot of our listeners are sort of small and mid-sized tech companies, SaaS and other, and general tech companies who are both have many partners, but also are part of large, enterprise partner networks. And I guess as you think about, how they should be lining up in terms of beginning to create relationships with the large AI players, whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic or whatnot. What do you have recommendations or thoughts in terms of kind of how to do that?
Yeah, I think if you take the examples you just mentioned, Anthropic and OpenAI, they are being pummeled by people wanting to engage with them. So unless you also look at kind of like their goals ahead of them, they need to be moving tens of billions of dollars in revenue, and so if you're a small SMB or mid-market business, the ability to have an outsized influence on the outcomes that Anthropic and OpenAI need to get to is probably relatively minimal. And so I would be in the shoes of your listeners. Maybe it's not those players, but it's other leading high growth AI companies that you could engage with. So a good example, like Gamma, is a company that's competing with, in essence, like Google Slides and PowerPoint with an AI first slide presentation technology, and they even launched like a fund with in partnership with another venture capital firm because they want people to build on top of what Gamma has created as a solution. And we see this now with a number of these like really high growth AI companies where they're kind of collaborating with venture capital firms to give more funding to smaller companies that can build with them. And so your ability to get noticed, I'd say, might be a bit easier if you're not chasing the absolute pinnacle of the AI companies. Now, that being said, you know, those companies, the OpenAIs and the Anthropics, are trying to make their platforms as self-serve as possible. We're going to see this, you know, very likely become just table stakes, is that most companies will have to build some kind of integration with these folks to get to market. And so keeping a close lens on, you know, how, what is publicly available, and then quickly building on top of that is going to be still like something that people are going to have to do. But yeah, I'd say, you know, knowing some of the partner people at these companies, they are definitely prioritizing some of the largest companies in the world just because of the goals they have ahead of them. And so, yeah, I think that's, you know, find your, also one other kind of comment on this, there are opportunities in the market that are maybe, let's consider maybe like a legacy industry. So I have a close friend who's at a company that's focused on the sort of senior living space, and like adding AI capabilities to the sales process, the onboarding process of those people into those facilities. That's not like a super sexy, you know, sort of industry per se, but they found an environment where there just historically hasn't been a lot of technology investment. I think that's an amazing opportunity for SMB and mid-market businesses, is to think about all of the sort of more legacy sort of companies that maybe didn't get on the first digital transformation wave as much as maybe, you know, the high tech industry did. And that creates an amazing opportunity for everybody to kind of jump in and find some revenue opportunities.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, a kind of follow up to that is, you know, obviously there are the new companies, the OpenAI and Anthropic and others, but there are also some sort of, you know, SaaS and platform companies like Microsoft and Google who have, you know, very good LLMs, and does it make sense also to aim at them because they have existing partner ecosystems, you know, much more mature and at all levels of engagement? Would it make some sense to aim at them as well if you're not already in the you know, for example, with Gemini, if you're not already attached to the, you know, the Gemini team, to work through Google to do that, where again they're much more mature in their partner ecosystem?
Yeah, we definitely are seeing a heavy emphasis from some of the hyperscalers on trying to promote the growth of sort of the agentic AI ecosystem. So, for example, like AWS carved out 3 agentic AI categories within its AI specialization back at reInvent in Vegas in December, and they launched with about 60 partners on that front. They are fueling that through, you know, tens of thousands of dollars in MDF funds, because they know this is a race, and so for them, they gated based on sort of capabilities. But we also see sort of the flip of that. So ServiceNow, another company we work with, so side note, Partnership Leaders does both a large community, we do events, but we also do services, and so we're sort of getting an inside lens into what's happening in some of these ecosystems, and we do a lot of research in the space. And so, you know, ServiceNow is sort of taking an opposite approach, where they're sort of seeding volume, where they overhauled their build program, where they in essence try to remove friction so that they get more people trying to build, and then they would qualify them afterwards. And so, as you know, as a company sort of thinking about the industry, you know, look at the sort of ecosystems you want to be maybe engaging with. And actually next month, I think approximately, is when our ecosystem compass report will come out, where we look at the top 50 sort of tech ecosystems, and we help people sort of gauge which ones might they want to invest into. Because you're right, like Anthropic and OpenAI are just 2 of the newer kind of companies that have huge ecosystems, but there's dozens of traditional SaaS companies that are trying to embrace AI and be close to this massive revolution. And so we're going to continue to see a lot of iterations around those companies trying to embrace a lot of these new AI companies, or even, in some cases, these are service companies also. That's another sort of big trend we're seeing, is that, the SIs and the agencies and consultancies, as they do work for their clients, they're also creating technology through AI and then trying to sort of platformarize. I'm trying to think of the right way to describe that. Create platform capabilities there so that they can take the work for one client and then try to apply that to additional clients. And so you're getting this sort of interesting blending of, what used to be these pretty defined, clear lines between service partners and tech partners is sort of blending, which is also leading to a lot of interesting developments on the partner program side, where companies like HubSpot are combining their programs together. We see this now with a lot. I think it was about, out of the 46 companies we were analyzing for partner program changes, like 8 of them completely overhauled their partner program in the last quarter. And so I don't think that's not small change. That's pretty massive change. And I think it's an acknowledgement of the fact that you see this shift of the roles of what used to be service and tech are kind of getting blended together.
Now, it seems to me, the word solution has been kind of thrown around forever in technology, but it sounds to me like, from what you're saying, we're sort of getting closer to a solution, whether it's partners working together and bundling, or companies commingling their products and services, but ultimately hearing much better the problem that the customer is talking about, and coming with a full stack solution as opposed to the bits and pieces. Is that kind of where we're evolving with partnerships?
I hope so. I've been in SaaS long enough that I remember the first kind of digital transformation wave of especially for service companies, and you have a lot of these sort of siloed transformational projects that you spend a long time deploying, and then you get finished with it, and there wasn't the right change management, there wasn't all the right strategy, and so then all of a sudden you get to the end of it and you start all over again. I think the expectation now is that because the technology barrier is lower to get these things created, that the results from those is expected to come a lot faster. And so I think especially for the service organizations, them being sort of like ecosystem orchestrators, where they're grabbing multiple tech vendors, especially in the AI world, they're grabbing potentially other services companies and kind of orchestrating these people together to get to a specific outcome. You also, to some extent, need a lot more context of the company's internal processes, because if you're going to deploy AI to make things more efficient, you've got to have a good sense of what the landscape looks like already. So my hope is that we're not going to have as many projects come out the other side and it be complete failures, or something you have to immediately change all over again. Because I think about 6 months ago, whatever it was, when that came out with saying, 95% of AI projects fail. And it's like, well, if you look at how a lot of those worked, I talked to a lot of my peers that work at AI companies, and they're like, yeah, some engineer in the corner was like, I'm going to start playing with this, and that was kind of like I don't need any services help, I don't need any change management, I'm just going to kind of tool around and see what happens. I don't think that was a fair representation of what AI could possibly do for these companies. And now what we hear consistently is like the sort of opposite, which is like, if a company of a decent scale is looking to adopt AI, they know they're going to have some service partners involved in the mix. They know they're going to have to take this more seriously and do the change management and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's just a lot more a realistic expectation of what it takes to adopt AI and make it successful.
This has been fantastic, Chris. Is it cool with you if I include both your details and also the event information for the upcoming Catalyst events in the description below?
Yeah, 100%. We'd love to see everybody at the summits. We're starting to get to capacity on some of them, but we have 20 of them around the world. So those would be wonderful. And then, yeah, for anybody that wants to come to New York with us, that's going to be the big one. So,
well, capacity is a good problem to have for sure. But thank you again, and really appreciate all the great wisdom today.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate the opportunity.